In this video, I'm going to mark up the 7-axis ABB YuMi Cobot inside of Inventor using the Emulate3D CAD is the model add-in. I'll then import it into Emulate3D and demonstrate how to connect it to the robot framework. So I'm going to start off by hiding this base component here, which is going to allow us to easily select the correct faces for our first joint. So I'm going to select my base from the hierarchy, and then I'm just going to toggle its visibility. And then I'm going to click on my first part, which is link 1, go to the Emulate3D tab, go to kinematic joints and add a kinematic revolute joint. And for this joint we need to define a few different things. So the first one is the axis. So this is the axis our part is going to rotate around. So for that I'm just going to select a face down here. And then the next bit we need to select is the anchor. So for the anchor I'm going to pick the same face, and this is going to position the anchor point in the center of that face. And then we can just leave the other settings as they are. So I'm just going to press OK. And that's our first joint made. So now I've made that joint, I'm just going to hide this part by toggling its visibility. And then I'm going to select link 2 from the hierarchy and add on the next joint. So kinematic revolute again. Again, need to select the axes and anchor. So I'm just going to rotate. And I'm going to use this face over here. So I'm going to click on the axis field and then on the face. Then the anchor field and then the face again. And because this part is linked to our link 1 part by a revolute joint, we need to actually set the base property on this part. So the base for our link 2 needs to be link 1. And then we can press OK. Again, just need to disable the visibility and add the next joint. Going to select this bottom face for the axis and anchor, and for the base need to select the previous part, which is link 2, and press OK. Now just toggle the visibility, select my next part, kinematic joints, kinematic revolute, select the axis and the anchor, choose the base from the hierarchy, link 3, hit OK. And now I can hide this part. Add on my 5th joint, revolute again. Select the visual, select the axes, and select the anchor. Again, set the base, so this time it's link 4. Hit OK. Hide the part. And then link 6, kinematic joints, revolute. Let's move that to the side. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this face here. So I'll select that one, and then the same face again for the anchor. And then for the base, I just pick the previous part, link 5. Hit OK. So that's my 6th joint done. Hide that. So now on my 7th, so kinematic joints, revolute again, and I'm going to pick this back face here for the axes and anchor, and then don't forget to set the base. So I've now set up my 7 joints, and you can see all 7 of those joints here in the assembly view, the assembly hierarchy. And if you want to maybe edit one of these joints, you can click on it and you can hit edit aspect here, and that will bring up the details. So if you need to change it, for example the limits, you want to add limits, you can just change that here, press OK, and that will enable limits. So I'm just going to unhide all these parts. And we're now actually ready to export this straight into Emulate3D. So unhide that one as well. So I've got Emulate3D open here. Just need to turn on the web server by pressing this little globe icon in the bottom corner. And then inside of Inventor, click Export to Emulate3D. We've got this little loading bar telling us the progress. Hopefully in a few seconds we'll see our robot inside our model. So you can see there it is, down here at the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is just going to position it over here. And then we'll attach the robot framework to it, and we'll get it to pick up small boxes and place them on the next conveyor line for us. So there's a couple of things I need to do. The first is I actually need to add a tool plate to my robot, and then I can easily snap a tool onto it. So I've got a pre-made tool plate I normally just drag and drop into the model, which I like to use. Just going to select the back face, and then because it's actually the wrong orientation, I'm just going to rotate my robot first, select the back face, and I'm going to snap it to this midpoint here. And now in the hierarchy I need to move my tool plate to be under my link 7. So when my link 7 moves, which is the final axis of our robot, our tool plate is going to move with it. So it's all going to be stuck together now. The next thing to do is to add on a robot tool. So I'm just going to use one of the pre-made tools from the robot framework inside the end effectors catalog. I'm going to use this smaller V17 vacuum gripper. So now I have my robot, it's got its tool plate and its tool. I'm just going to reposition it a tiny bit there. And now I can go back to my robot framework catalog and add the robot controller to the model. On the controller, we need to specify two visual references. So we have our robot visual reference and our tool visual reference. So I'm going to click and hold on the robot one and select our Cobot. And then for the tool, I'm going to click and drag and select the vacuum gripper tool we added. We then need to connect up the start and end connectors. I'm going to connect it to the end of that conveyor and the start of that conveyor. And now when we press play, so our robot moves, picks up our box and drops it off. So one thing we might want to think about doing is adding some limits to this robot, because you can see right now it's doing the pick and place, but it's doing it in quite an odd manner. So you could probably fix that by adding some more limits to our robots. So I'm going to go back to Inventor and we'll add on those limits. So for our first joint, we want to add a upper and lower limit. So the lower limit is minus 168.5 and the upper is 168.5. For our joint 2, we want to add some more limits as well, so minus 143.5 and 43.5, and hit OK. Joint 3 as well. The lower limit is minus 123.5 and the upper limit is 80. Joint 4, we don't need to add any limits because it's minus 290 to 290 degrees, and because the range is over 360 degrees, we don't bother adding limits. For axes 5, the lower limit is -88, the upper limit is 138. Axis 6, again this is -229 to 229 degrees, and because the range is greater than 360, it's best not to add limits. And then for the final one, link 7, click there on the joint, not the part. I'm going to add in the limits of -168.5 and 168.5, and we'll press OK. So we can just import this straight back into Emulate3D. Before we do that, I'm just going to detach the robot tool, and then I'll do export to Emulate3D. So if we switch back to Emulate3D, we can see our new robot over here. So it looks exactly the same, but it actually has the limits now. So the easiest way to check this is to just select the robot controller, so it updates, and then if we just expand the robot controller window, you can see our 7 joints now have limits applied to them. So if I spin this top round, it's now between 168 and -168, and for joint 3, for example, it's between 80 and -123 now. So we've successfully applied our limits. We can now just reattach our robot tool and press play. And our robot now picks up our boxes and then places them on the next conveyor. So one thing you might notice is this robot is reaching up really high just before picking or placing. And we can change that behavior just by clicking on our robot controller. If we go to its properties, there should be an above load position, so this one here. So we can change that to be 0.2 meters instead, and we can see how that affects our robot. So you can see our robot now does a slightly different movement as we've changed the above load property on it.